Picture this. You're walking through a shopping mall in Shanghai. Polished floors, food court, storefront signage, the works. Completely ordinary. Except you never went outside to get here. You came straight from a subway platform, and above your head right now sit thousands of tons of concrete, asphalt, and rush hour traffic that you will never feel move. 3,000 kilometers away, in Chongqing, a light rail train is about to do something that looks physically impossible. It's going to drive straight through the 6th floor of an occupied 19-story apartment building. Then keep going, while residents on the floors above and below go about their evening completely undisturbed. And underneath Beijing, in tunnels most residents walking above have never even heard of, there's a network built decades ago for a war that never came. One that's since been turned into storage, workshops, and, for a while, actual apartments. China didn't run out of room to build. It just started building in the one direction nobody else was fighting over, straight down. The tunnels built for a war that never came start with the oldest and strangest layer, Beijing's Dixiacheng, literally underground city. In 1969, tensions between China and the Soviet Union boiled over into actual border clashes. Mao Zedong, convinced a full nuclear conflict might be coming, gave the order to dig. And Beijing's own residents did the digging. Roughly 300,000 ordinary citizens, students, and soldiers, working mostly by hand with shovels and baskets, spent the next decade carving out a shelter system stretching across more than 80 square kilometers underneath the heart of the city, sitting anywhere from 8 to 18 meters below street level. It wasn't just tunnels. Planners built classrooms, clinics, a theater, grain stores, even chambers set aside for growing mushrooms without sunlight, all connected by a network with something like 90 separate entrances, many of them hidden behind ordinary shop fronts that Beijing residents walked past every day without knowing what was underneath. It was designed to shelter as much as 40% of the city's population for months at a time. It was never used for that purpose, and for years afterward, large sections simply sat there, unused, a monument to a war that never happened, until the city started renting sections out as storage, workshops, and, controversially, cheap housing for migrant workers who couldn't afford anything at street level. What was built as an absolute last resort quietly became, for a while, someone's actual apartment. The mall you reach without ever seeing the sky. Move south to Shanghai, and the reason for building underground stops being about war entirely. It's about traffic. Beneath some of Shanghai's busiest intersections, underground shopping streets stretch for hundreds of meters at a time, connecting directly into subway stations, so commuters can walk straight from the platform to a storefront without ever surfacing into daylight. These aren't cramped underpasses with a couple of newsstands. Some run longer than several city blocks combined, fully climate-controlled, polished, lit, and laid out so convincingly like an ordinary mall that first-time visitors regularly lose track of which exit leads back to which street. That illusion of normalcy is deliberate engineering. Deep foundation systems and reinforced ceiling structures spread the enormous weight of the traffic and buildings above across a much wider footprint below, which is the only reason 6 lanes of cars can sit directly overhead without anyone shopping underneath ever feeling so much as a vibration. The train that drives through an apartment building. Now for the one that genuinely looks fake the first time you see video of it. Liziba Station on Chongqing's Metro Line 2. Chongqing is built across brutally steep mountainous terrain along 2 rivers, which means flat land for a conventional station simply didn't exist at this location. The site sat wedged between a residential tower and a cliffside. Demolishing the building wasn't politically realistic. Tunneling through the mountain instead would have cost far more and taken far longer. So engineers did something almost nobody else in the world had tried. They built the station inside the building. The 6th and 7th floors of a 19-story residential tower now hold the actual train tracks, with a platform on the floor above, designed and built at the same time as the apartments themselves, not added afterward. To keep residents from being shaken awake every few minutes, engineers physically separated the rail structure's supports from the building supports, leaving a gap of roughly 20 centimeters between them so the two structures never directly touch. Combined with rubber-tired trains and shock-absorbing air springs, the noise inside the apartments stays around 60 decibels, quieter than an average conversation. People have lived above and below an active train line for 2 decades now, and most days they don't think about it at all. Why the engineering never stops at good enough. What separates Chinese underground infrastructure from a typical basement parking garage isn't the depth. It's what it's built to survive at the same time. Many of China's largest cities sit on river deltas or coastal plains, where monsoon flooding can put entire streets underwater within hours. So, underground entrances are built above expected floodlines, sealed with watertight systems, and backed by drainage capacity designed to intercept water before it ever reaches street level below. China also sits across multiple active seismic zones, and counterintuitively, a structure fully surrounded by solid earth can actually absorb an earthquake's shockwave more effectively than a tower standing exposed above ground. Provided the tunnel linings are reinforced with joints flexible enough to move slightly without cracking, and running underneath almost all of it, quietly, is that original Cold War-era design standard. Reinforced concrete shells originally specified to survive bombardment, a construction philosophy that still shapes how deep and how heavily reinforced brand-new civilian infrastructure gets built today, even when the project is nothing more dramatic than a parking garage or a shopping concourse. The part nobody sees. Farms and servers in the dark. Not everything being built underground is meant for people to walk through at all. In recent years, repurposed tunnel space and old air raid shelters have started housing vertical farming operations. Vegetables grown under artificial light in fully climate-controlled rooms, completely insulated from surface weather, pollution, or season. Data centers have moved underground for a similar reason. A stable year-round temperature slashes the enormous cooling costs normally needed to keep server racks from overheating, while the surrounding rock or concrete offers a level of physical security that would be far more expensive to replicate in a standalone building at street level. None of this shows up in tourist photos of glowing underground malls or trains threading through apartment towers, but it represents something telling about how thoroughly China has committed to the underground, not as a novelty, and not only as an emergency backup plan, but as working infrastructure quietly generating real economic value, humming along beneath the feet of people who will never know it's there. What ties all of this together isn't one grand master plan. Beijing dug for a war that never arrived. Shanghai built downward to escape gridlock. Chongqing solved a mountain that left it no other option. Each one solved a completely different problem the same way, by refusing to treat no land left as the end of the conversation. The result is a second layer of Chinese cities that most of the world barely knows exists. Millions of people shopping, commuting, working, and even sleeping beneath streets that look, from above, like nothing unusual is happening at all. If you want more stories about the infrastructure hiding in plain sight, or, in this case, hiding beneath it, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.